Alright folks, I'm going to be going over some of our damage build here with our little Dragon Knight stamina build. It's not going to be a great set. I'm going to be honest with you, most of you are probably going to be able to find better damage inside a Magicka build. But since I have a lot of people coming into stream asking, what do you use for your damaging abilities? Here it is. This is usually about a good set that you can get about a good 10 to 12 DPS. People who are better with their animation weaving and all that stuff can probably get a good 15k out of this. But for me, I'm probably averaging about maybe 7, 10, depending on what I do for certain days. So first off, on our Helm and shoulders, we are using dungeon sets Valken Skoria. You can get this in Veteran City of Ash, and I'm currently using a light and heavy piece for this. For my other sets here, I'm using Hundings Rage, full 5-piece set. And on my belt here, I am using Morag Tong. Now, you can go ahead and use... You can replace Morag Tong for any one of these sets if you have the pieces for it. In addition, it's also probably better with Vet 12, Vet 14. But since I've been using Morag Tong since 1.5, we only have Vet 12 on this. With the Hundings Rage, we're using this for the weapon critical, stamina, and the weapon damage at the 5-piece bonus. The Morag Tong, we're using it for the weapon damage. In addition to that, we also have Shadow Walker rings, which are giving us extra weapon damage on top of this. Now, there is Shadow Walker jewelry that you can get for the necklace. However, we're using this primarily for the weapon damage. If we had the necklace, we could get the extra stamina, but it wouldn't really help us that much. Morag Tong addition, you notice that we get weapon damage on it. 3-piece, we could also get more stamina, but we're not really looking for stamina on this build right now. On our weapon bar here, we're using swords and we're using bows. We're using Hundings Rage for both of these here. And as you can see, we're getting we've seen a little bit of use on this. I'm using flame damage on both of these here. If you're going to be using this in PvP, you might want to go with disease damage, and you also may want to go with something like a hammer instead that could do penetration instead of weapon critical on this. For my character slot here, I'm doing currently I'm doing 55 health and 7 stamina. You can choose to use whatever you want, but currently I go with the health here because I have vampirism on my character. That makes it a little bit weaker to a lot of other flame-based damage, and having the extra health really does help. And the stamina here is what I use as well. Another thing I should mention as well, everything here I have is stacked with a stamina enchantment as well. My base health here is about 20,000. If you're not using vampirism, you're either going with a werewolf or something like that, you can probably drop your health down to about 18 to 17. Even 16 would probably be good. But you gotta be careful because you're probably gonna drop yourself down low enough that you're gonna be one-shot in a lot of dungeons if you do this. My maximum stamina, I'd like to try keeping it above 18 if possible. That's where you want to have it there. Now, the stamina recovery, currently I have drink on. As you can see down here, all primary stats, and I do recommend getting drink on this type of build because if you go with the food, you're going to have your stamina recovery extremely low. You're going to have to keep that dragon blood on you. But meanwhile, if you take a look at your weapon damage, you're going to get about 18, 59 with the bow, and on the two-hander, you're going to be at 19. Now, if you use a rally, that's going to jump up to about 2301. And about 2204 for that. Now, for abilities here, we're using a couple different ones here. My primary one is going to be using, for my primary damage bar on the two-hander, it's going to be Executioner, Wrecking Blow, Unstable Flame, Rally, and Flames of Oblivion. Flames of Oblivion is one of those toggleables, much the same as Mage's Light. As you can see, your weapon critical will jump up as long as you have this on here. You're going to get about over 50% on your weapon critical. That's also with the Khajiit passives too. Now, usually what I would do is put Wrecking Blow on, weave this in with a heavy attack, put Unstable Flame on every so often there, and then use Rally to pump myself up with Major Brutality. The good thing with this is the Major Brutality here will last quite a while here, as you can see. 30 seconds there. And with that, you're going to get your stats boosted up real high in that. So, going back and forth between your Wrecking Blow and Unstable Flame, that's usually going to be how you do a lot of your damage. With the Unstable Flame, you're also going to get more damage on top of this because your Valken Skoria will proc off this too. Executioner is a good way to keep your enemies down. Now, the other bar here, on my bow bar, Typically, I'll do Venom Arrow, Lethal Arrow, and Acid Spray repeatedly on bosses that I need to keep far away from. Things like the Manticora, for example, I need to keep myself away from them, and I will keep on at least Venom Arrow and Lethal Arrow to keep them down. Acid Spray is simply a good AoE to use, but keep in mind that it's a damage over the time, reducing it takes 5 seconds. So usually what I try to do is do about 1 acid spray and then to follow it up with a venom shot or 2 to a couple of the enemies there, and then rotate back over to acid spray as you're taking on groups of enemy. When you're doing a boss or something like that, usually it's about a lethal arrow, venom arrow, acid spray. In between that, I'll be doing heavy attacks as well, and then trying to get another lethal arrow or 2 off before I apply another acid spray, and then once in a while put another venom arrow on top of that. Now, green dragon blood is good in general because most abilities that you're going to be looking for, most times you're going to be looking for that extra endurance, and that is going to pump it right up there. With this type of build here, as you can see, it's going to pump it up to about 14 while we have our drink on here. And that's going to keep yourself up in the damage realm here. In addition to that, you may also want to change out some of these abilities as well. If you're going to be doing a Daedra heavy dungeon, what I usually recommend doing is simply going over to your fighter's guild. If you have Camo Hunter or Evil Hunter, either way, just stack it and replace it with over your Flames of Oblivion. And then keep this up as well, because this is going to keep your critical up as well. Only reason I don't like to keep it up as primary, though, is because the Flames of Oblivion, for most of that, is going to keep another little mote of fire that's going to also damage some of these enemies here, and it just does it automatically, so you don't have to think about it. The good thing with the Evil Hunter is it's going to return stamina to you, but you have to remember to put it on there. It also costs stamina to use. That's one of the reasons I like Flames of Oblivion over that. But if you're going to get Daedra heavy dungeon, I kind of like to keep Evil Hunter on there simply because of the stamina return to it. You guys can take and pick and choose which you like there. Another variation on this I'd like to do as well is when you're doing this in like very fire intensive dungeons, when you're weak to it, or simply you have to keep yourself sustained, especially like something in the Manticora fight, putting any shield onto either bar here will give you an extra boost of health and also increase the increase your mending. So like some of the things like your Panacea's health and all that stuff, and the healing from the green dragon blood will help you that much more when you have the Aeneas shield. You can also mix it up with rally as well to give you a bit of extra health here. That's a little bit more of a safe type of route there, but when you're trying to simply survive through some of those fights there, and you don't have like a whole DPS requirement, I do recommend to do it, especially when you have to get up close and you have to fight some of these things. A couple other variations you can do with it as well. If you have to go in real close, I should talk on ultimates for a minute here. Usually I keep the Dawnbreaker on the bow bar, and I usually keep something like a meteor on the on my two-handed bar. You can change that up. You can change that up as well. Like if you're doing more DPS on your two-hander, take your Dawnbreaker, put it over here. Take your meteor, put it over here. You can also go with corrosive armor. This is a good ability that simply makes it so you're invulnerable to damage and also ignores 100% damage. And inside of some of these PVE fights, that's going to help you a lot. You take a look in your Ardent Flame line, you can go with Shifting Standard, and that's also going to help you a bit with more damage than the Meteor on multiple targets. But if you're going against a single target, Meteor on average is probably going to be doing more damage than the Shifting Standard, because a lot of times you're going to miss the Shifting Standard and you're going to have to get in close to use it too. I wish it was a little bit better. In addition to that, I should also mention it also has a higher cost than your Meteor Ultimate. You can also shift this over to Ice Comet or into the other one as well. I just simply kept it in Meteor because I don't want to waste the skill points on too many different abilities here with everything I have. Let's see, what's the other one here? Igneous weapons, again, you can go with this or you can go with the other one. I unfortunately do not think that Igneous weapons is great on a stamina build. It's probably more preferred on a magicka build because of the high cost to it. Even with the extra second you get with each heavy attack that you use on it, it's still only for less than 10 seconds. You have to constantly keep your heavy attacks in the rotation, and it's going to take you a long time to get that magic up at times, and like animation weave it with something else. You're probably better off with the finisher one that's going to give you more damage when targets are under 50%, but even that is still a high magic cost that I can't validate against using it with this type of build. You can also go with Burning Breath if you want to put on a bit of damage for an AoE, especially if you're going to be doing something like a AoE bar on your bow bar here. Using something like Acid Spray and Burning Breath here would be a great way to do it. The only issue I have with Burning Breath is it's very easy to misjudge the distance that you have on the targets, and Acid Spray will hit them from a good distance here, where you got 10 meters on the Burning Breath. So you got to be careful on how you do it. But ultimately here, the only thing that I can say from the DK line that really helps is probably Unstable Flame. Just for the damage that it gives with the dot, the increasing damage it gives every 2 seconds, and the ability for it to proc on the Valken Skoria. That's usually what you're looking for with that. So, in general, that's generally how I do most of the damage inside this build currently. And on average, I can probably say that I can do about a good 7k, like I said previously. Better weavers can probably get a good 12 to 15k out of this if they do it properly, but you're still going to have some hurting if you're trying to keep up with it. For potions, I do recommend Panaceas of Health, as well as weapon power potions as well. You can get a bit more boost with your brutality and your savagery with that as well, and maybe not have to slot in Evil Hunter as much if you do that. But for most of the enchantments that we're looking at on side of our sorry about that, inside of our things here, I will probably put on Flame Resistance here and put a bunch of stamina cost reduction abilities here just so I can get more damage out. Now champion points, it's all up to you on how you want to use it here. How I usually recommend using mine, though, being a vampire, usually put most everything into Elemental Defender. That's how I get most of my resistance to fire on this. Getting 10% is pretty good. Inside of the Mages Guild line here, I do recommend getting at least 30 points up to get the Perfect Strike with Critical Strike. That's going to give you a bit more damage. And under the stamina lines here, you can go with a couple of them. I do like the way that Mooncalf here will give you a bit more stuff. Warlord here with the Ensnare is kind of nice when you want to get when you have to get something bashed for whatever reason. But Tumbling also helps as well, because if you're going to be reducing a lot of your damage with if you're going to be surviving a lot, you're going to have to do a lot of roll dodging, especially with Vampirism. It's the best way to keep yourself out of a lot of fire damage and avoid a lot of the damage that you have. So when you have a boss if you have a boss that you're fighting, or if you have a bunch of mobs you're fighting, basically you want to just keep on getting a bit of fire on them like this. Then as they come closer to you, roll dodge, and just keep yourself out of the way when you do that. You'll notice that a bit when I use it in stream, and a few other things like that as well. Now, if you're going to be doing PvP, what I usually recommend is a different set as well, because PvP is a slightly different nature as well. Now, in PvP, I will use slightly different abilities here, depending on what I'm going against and how many people I have with me here. Usually I recommend going in with the two-hander. I use it actually as the off bar, usually using crit rush, executioner, and then maybe burning breath and unstable flame and rally, okay? But however, I have been using wrecking blow a lot more inside PvP, and I really don't like to, but unfortunately it's sometimes something you have to do with PvP. Wrecking blow is extremely overused. I really wish they would make it so it's a little bit more skill-based to use inside PvP. A lot of people would just spam it over and over again, and you can absolutely dodge it and, you know, getting around it, but it's just everyone uses it, especially with the combination of Petrify, which is really overpowered for a lot of PvP stuff. If you want to go with Petrify inside PvP, go ahead. I'm not using it because really it's a very overpowered ability at this point, and until they kind of fix it, I'm not going to be touching it myself. For ultimates, I typically use Devouring Swarm on this. Reason being that I'm trying to build ultimate up on my bow bar here, and I'll simply rush in when a bunch of enemies are low with crit rush after popping the Devouring Swarm, and just try killing them all if I can. Now on my bow bar, I will typically use Venom Arrow, Magnum Shot. I have Igneous weapons loaded up here. Honestly though, usually I just come back over and I will switch over either to Evil Hunter, or I will swap over into Lethal Arrow. With this, Lethal Arrow is very long to use inside PvP. However, if you're in stealth or you're in group, it's a good one to load in here. With the Venom Arrow and Magnum Shot, the reason I'm using these two is because Magnum Shot will toss around most enemies that try to get close to you. Venom Arrow will interrupt most people that are trying to get close to you and try to do Jesus Beam or some other things like that. I will also use Dragon Scales and Green Dragon Blood. Now I'm trying to make sure that I have a heal on each bar with this build, so I can get myself up if I need to. Green Dragon Blood's is an absolute must for most of these here, and Rally is a great stamina based one. I really wish I had the Vigor, so I could use that as well, but unfortunately it's a very high level PvP skill and I haven't spent enough time in there to get that. On my ultimate bar here, I will use Corrosive Armor, because Corrosive Armor will do a bit of damage to enemies, especially those high tanky targets. They'll think that they're invincible. You use Corrosive Armor, you pop it, you're going to be reducing your damage and also ignoring the 100% of their damage for up to 10 seconds. That is just an amazing time to be using like Venom Arrow, Wrecking Blow, and other abilities on top of your other ones there. That'll kill a lot of people if they're not paying attention to their health and getting themselves up. Dragon Scales is because I need to be able to counter snipe people and also deal with other Dragon Knights. Most other Dragon Knights don't pay attention when they're popping their Dragon Scales, and if they pop theirs, I pop mine. What's going to happen here is when I use a Venom Arrow or when I use like a Lethal Arrow here as well, I'll pop it and then I'll start plinking them off. They're going to think that they're invincible to all ranged abilities. I'll just keep on using this Dragon Scale every time they pop theirs, and either A, they're going to be running out of their Dragon Scales, or B, they're going to like use it once, then everything that they've been trying to reflect is coming back at them for 35% additional damage, possibly even more, because it reflects like double time every time that it does it. And it just like lays waste to a lot of Dragon Knights because they don't realize, oh wait, you can double reflect a lot of these shots that you have there, and that just simply kills them right off, especially when it's pop Corrosive Armor and they're a much more tanky type build. So that's basically how I would do most of my PvP stuff. I do recommend tripods over weapon power pots, simply because the weapon power pots are good if you need a quick boost on something. However, most times I'm popping Rally right before I go in for a sniper shot, and that's usually what I use for that. You can offer different variations for this how you want to, but this is at least what I currently do for most of my stamina based DPS inside of PvE and PvP type of situations. Hope you enjoy, guys. I'm going to come back with another video here, going over a few more theme builds and fun things to do inside.